So we're going to start with Yuki today first. So tell us about Nakamura chocolates, please.
Yes. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Nakamura chocolates, my partner and I started about 14 years ago, originally from Tokyo, and I moved to Canada, and then I moved to Australia, and I never looked back. Perth really grew on me, so I never left. When I first came here, I had been a self-taught chocolatier for many, many years, but I don't know, just my heart was saying something else, that let's do this. Life is short, so let's do this. So when I came here, I studied Melbourne a little bit, and I studied under the French patisserie in Swanbourne. But they told me everything, like, croissant, macaron, all the petit gâteau, but chocolates, by chocolate. So my passion is creating something that's beautiful to look at, but also, of course, have to be delicious. So my partner, Marlon, is a designer, so we collaborate. So I make chocolates, and then he creates the packaging and the visual side of it. So we started this business together. And about 7 years ago, I had this opportunity to expand to Japan, and it was it's a partnership agreement between the 140-year-old Japanese confectionery company in Japan, it's called Nakamura, and us. And at the beginning, I was like, it's like, why would 140-year-old company would contact us and want us? But as we built the relationship, it came out to be something that we both want, and we took a chance, and then we've been working since together, and it's been a great partnership. And getting to Japanese market, I learned a lot, and it's been a very interesting journey.
And you spend a great deal of time flying to Japan.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. So I fly about 4 or 5 times a year to Japan for work, and because we have a team of chocolatiers in Japan. So the chocolates that we make in Australia, we make in here because freshness is important. And the chocolates that we sell in Japan, we make in Japan. So we have a team of chocolatiers making here and there. And I go to Japan to teach and show them what the new flavors are, new techniques are, and share what we believe in, the values in Nakamura chocolates.
And one of the things I find fascinating about your chocolates is they are so beautifully designed, but you use West Australian ingredients and Australian ingredients. Can you tell us how you use our wonderful ingredients to give perhaps, make your product so sophisticated and elegant?
So I think my partner and I had this vision from the beginning. I think I told you at the beginning, like, we wanted to create something delicious. Not only delicious, but also beautiful to look at, because we eat with our eyes. So we think the whole experience as a whole to the customer's experience. So, and then at the beginning, I was making these Japanese flavors because it was quite new to Australia still. Like, for example, green tea or sesame or yuzu fruit. And then, as I lived here longer, I discovered this wonderful Australian produce. And I have 2 boxes that contains Australian produce. One is specifically for Southwest ingredients, like whiskey and wine and truffle that come from Old Margaret River. The other box is Australian, so it's the 10 flavor selection, use the bush flavors. So lemon myrtle, wattle seed, Davison plum, you name it, all these wonderful flavors that it's been existing for many, many years. And I learned from my mentor, and that she taught me quite a bit, and I'm still learning from her. And but I don't take credit for it because it's not my culture, it's their culture, and we're just sharing the knowledge with them. And then it's a very intriguing thing for Japanese people as well.
I think one of the fascinating things about your business and why you're a good example of trade is that you sell way more chocolates in Japan of Australian produce chocolates effectively than would ever be sold in Australia. Can you talk about why why the Japanese culture loves your chocolate so much?
I think the main thing why our chocolate's being bought in Japan in a large quantity, it's because they like the story behind it. We not only sell chocolates, but we also sell the story comes with it, not the Australian history, but also the lifestyle that come with it. You know, how we enjoy the dinner party with our family, or you know, how we like to bring a box with chocolates to a friend's birthday party. For them, it's not a thing they would do. So they do like that connotation of like, oh, that's a kind of nice gesture that we can do as well. And I think we fit right into that kind of gesture that they want to do.
Yeah. And just before we talk a little bit more about chocolates and discuss some of the photographs that you've brought in, you have a dual role as a board member of the Australia-Japan Foundation. Can you tell the room what that foundation does?
Yes, of course. So we call it AJF, Australian Japan Foundation. It's a part. Oh. Yep, is that okay? Yep. So AJF, Australian Japan Foundation. It's part of DFAT, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And what we do is to develop and strengthen the bilateral relationship between Japan and Australia through supporting and funding the project in various areas. Thank you very much.
This is part of the entertainment.
Good. Yeah. So, for example, to give you the example of the projects that we support in WA, last year we supported this exhibition at the Art Gallery of WA. It was a series of bringing the prominent Asian artist. Yeah. So it was a series of bringing the prominent Asian artist to Western Australia, and one of them happened to be a Japanese artist called Nara Yoshimoto, and he's a quite famous, widely known artist. But he's also known for not lending his art easily. So it was a privilege to have him here and all his artwork, and then to be shared by many and then appreciated by many people here. So we partially funded that. And also the other thing was the collaborative research between universities like Curtin University and the University in Fukuoka, which is a southern island part of Japan. So they had this collaborative research project on critical minerals and the energy transition. So we do try to diversify what we support, because it's important to focus not only on energy and critical minerals, but also other aspects of trades, you know, which is sports, diplomacy, media, science, arts, you name it. I think that's what we are about. It's not just big trades.
And you spend a lot of time, you know, working in this area. Why do you think these organisations and similar organisations are important?
Similar information as in like
similar organisations to Australia-Japan Foundation.
Oh yes.
Yeah, because the government sets them up. You know, why are they so important?
Yes, definitely collaboration is always a big part. It's as an organization, as I say, you know, from small things, little big things grow. So as a cohort, we can achieve bigger things, I believe.
Okay, thank you very much. And you've just sent us some lovely photos. And I love the Australian designs that are so popular in Japan. Who would have thought? And this is a lovely photograph of you with Adam.
Oh yeah.
So these are your fellow board members?
That's right, yeah, board members, yeah.
Yeah, well, fabulous. Well, that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much. So we're going to turn to Louise Clunies-Ross. Here she is. Very nice.
Fresh from this weekend.
And she has what would be called a massive week this week, and this is the reason why. Would you like to let the audience know what's happening this week, and also a little bit more about the WA Chinese Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, sure.
So good morning, everyone. It's great to. I've attended a few of these Quorum events, and it's lovely being on the speaking side. And this trade in Asia is obviously quite relevant, especially with what's happened on our shores just in recent times in the last few days. I'll just give you a brief overview of WA Chinese Chamber of Commerce, which I currently have joined as the CEO in February. It's a not-for-profit that stands for the WA Diaspora, Chinese diasporas in WA. We do represent a lot of SMEs, mainly from Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, etc. Other than the usual suspects of China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. It has been established in the 80s and came out of Chonghua Association, which is one of the oldest ethnic associations with over 110 years of history. So the Chamber of Commerce focuses on the business and economic side. So one of the objectives, as you would probably understand, would be to facilitate business activities in trade and investment between WA and Asia. We also promote a better understanding of the business environment plus the cultural sensitivities that may exist in a lot of the markets in Asia that would differ from WA and Australia. And lastly, also, we connect and facilitate introductions between WA businesses and businesses in Asia. So we do regularly host incoming delegations, and for example, we will have a business mission going to Malaysia in September this year, looking at 2 different states. It is a very exciting week because, as you will probably have seen in the news, Premier Li Qiang, the second most influential person in China after President Xi, is currently on our shores and in Perth today. And it's been a very exciting 3 days since his arrival. It's the most significant visit since 2017, which was when the last Chinese premier visited, Li Keqiang visited in 2017. So it does signal warming up of the relationship between Australia and China, and hopefully we can see a lot more of the lifting of the tariffs to come, of which has been imposed on Australia in goods such as beef, barley, coal, lobster and crayfish, and wine, of which we've seen many, except for our beautiful lobster and crayfish that still remains in place. So we're hopeful that means that more of the tariffs would be, the final remaining one would be lifted as well.
And just talking about the lobsters, which we call crayfish in WA, you told me a few days ago a fascinating story about how the WA Chinese community supported the crayfish fishers, the lobster providers. Can you just expand for the audience to get just a little glimpse into what's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think it's a lovely story. So when the tariffs came in 2020, all of a sudden, a lot of these produce that are meant for Chinese shores suddenly doesn't have a home to go to. And the fisheries communities have come to us and kind of asked, what can we do? So what the Chinese Chamber actually did was we actually opened up our chamber doors and facilitate the sales of their beautiful crayfish and lobsters to the WA diaspora in Australia and in WA, and we helped help them offload some of those beautiful produce and feasted on lobsters for quite a while, from what I heard. Yes.
So that was an incredible show of goodwill, really,
yes.
and the Chinese community really tried their very best to support the industry,
Yes.
and that was I found that very interesting. Another thing that really strikes me is you have about 100 members, but the access those members get is quite extraordinary. Could you to access to leaders? Could you just expand for the audience to let them know what kind of access your members end up with?
Historically, WA Chinese Chamber has been the premier chamber facilitating business, trade, and investment between Asia and WA. Typically, we do have Asian leaders when they visit the country that would facilitate a forum with our members. So we've had presidency before he was the president, visit when he was in Australia, come and speak at the chamber to our members, and also the Malaysian ministers have been part of it, and obviously many Australian prime ministers. So we were very privileged that the Prime Minister, Premier Roger Cook, and also the Chinese ambassador was actually one of our VIP guests, along with his the Prime Minister's cabinet ministers and parliamentarians. Was one of the 900 strong participants at our Chinese New Year Ball this year.
And this is, we've got a lovely photograph of what you're talking about here.
Yes, so this is one of the photos, and I think as part of the Prime Minister's speech, he said it's easier for him to acknowledge his cabinet ministers that were not present than to list up the ones that weren't actually present. So I think it's a fantastic collection of political will, but also the business community as well at large. Yeah.
And would it be true to say that your incoming president for the past year or two, Tony Chong, is going to be more outwardly facing?
I would hope so. I think very much in the Chinese way of doing business. They're very modest. They do like to be a bit more behind the scenes rather than standing up front. I have been pushing Tony with your help to be a bit more to promote some of the good things the great things that we've been doing. It's been a very exciting few months since I've joined the chamber, and there's going to be a lot more exciting program that'll be coming up as well.
And one of the things in our research I discovered was that there was a small Chinese community in the Swan River colony. So the Chinese community have been here since colonisation, and some people might think that also that they have to be Chinese to join the chamber. What would you say to that?
Oh no, more than half of our chamber members are actually not Asian of Asian descent. We obviously work a lot with the Australian NWO businesses to try and access markets in Asia. This can be through some of our master classes, such as marketing in China, or how to better do business in Asia. So these are some of the ways that we facilitate that kind of learning as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And now we're going to move to Jeremy. Now, Jeremy works for Baker Hughes, and Baker Hughes is listed on the NASDAQ stock exchange. So we have to be quite careful in the way we present. So that's why we've got some formal slides at this point.
No, ask me anything. Come on. We've got media.
No, terrible trouble. Can you tell us about your role at Baker Hughes and give us an overview of the company and your footprint across the Asia Pacific?
Kaya, good morning everybody, and thank you for having me. I've been to these events a few times over the last year, and it's a pleasure to finally be at the front of the room. Show of hands, anybody heard of Baker Hughes? Or do you think you know what we're doing? Okay, about half the room, good. We generally get, are you a law firm, or do you make cookies? I mean, we're not a chocolatier. But we are a energy technology company. And what does that mean? We globally, we have about 58,000 employees. We're about 1,000 in Australia. Last year we did $30 billion in orders, so a large multinational. We are involved in traditional energy, new energy, and industrial products. So within Australia, we've been here for over 50 years. We are involved in one shape or another in every major energy project around the country, whether that's oil, gas, power generation, we have sensors, so every time you go on an aircraft, your wings were probably inspected by one of our technology. The majority of the LNG that leaves this country heading for Asia, whether it be Japan, Korea, is compressed and liquefied with our technology. So we have a very large technology footprint, and we think that technology is going to play a key role, one, in trade and how the future economies between Australia and Asia are going to develop.
Okay, excellent. Shall we move to the next slide? So I think we might talk about the most promising technological advancements that are driving the shift towards more sustainable trade practices between Asia and Australia. And would you like to go to this one here, or would you prefer?
We can come back to that one, or we can stay
yeah?
here. So
okay.
the way that as an energy technology company, we see that there's a energy trilemma. There is the need to provide energy to the world, but it needs to be done sustainably, security, and affordable. And then if you add in another concept of efficiency, that is what we call sustainable energy development. So we need to make sure that we produce enough energy, get it to the right areas for the right people in the lowest emissions intensity way possible. And that's where we think that technology is going to play a pivotal role. So as we continue to export our energy, whether it be through liquefied natural gas, whether it goes into the future of hydrogen, technology is going to play a critical role in, one, making sure that it is sustainable, affordable, secure, and energy efficient. The technologies that we see coming, there's quite a number which we'll get to in the front, but I think two things that stand out for me. One is around lower emissions power generation. We have, over the past 2 years, our company has invested $2.1 billion into new technologies, partnerships. Last year, we invested $700 million into R&D for technologies. We're granted over 2,000 patents. So a lot of work going into trying to understand what is going to be coming in the future. Now, we know that the technology is going to continue to evolve. Where we think we'd be today, if you asked me a year ago, I wouldn't know. Where we're going to be in a year, it's continuing to evolve. So we are taking a pragmatic approach and investing in a lot of different technologies for a lot of different markets, whether the future is hydrogen export, whether it's ammonia, whether it's different carriers. Energy is going to be moving back and forth, and we have invested in a number of technologies to support any one of those pathways. One of the most promising that I think is around a company called Net Power, which is a way to generate net zero power as long as you have has anybody heard of CCS, carbon capture and storage? Yep. Most people, yes. So CCS is a way to capture the CO2 from either existing operations or from direct air or other means. If you can take that CO2 stream and you can make it, use it to generate power, that is a zero emissions power generation source. We think that this technology called Net Power has a lot of application in Australia and others. One of the other things that we see a lot of growth in is around energy management systems. So as we move from traditional coal power generation, which most of Australia is, into lower emission power, and integrating renewables into the grid, the power generation network and the power distribution network around Australia is going to need to evolve a lot. So we've invested in a number of companies to support that as well.
Shall we flick to some of those companies now, or should we? Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Or this one. Would you like to look at this one?
Yeah, and then we'll come back. So
Yeah.
I mentioned that we've invested over $2 billion into new technologies. What you see up there is it's grouped into different types of hydrogen production. And so there's, if anybody's been following along, there's basically a different color of the rainbow for different hydrogen generation. So if it comes from renewable energy, it's green. If it comes from different mixes of gases or coals, it will be so green, blue, turquoise, brown. There's a pink. There's also a gold hydrogen, which is natural hydrogen. So there's lots of different colors there. Also in the geothermal, which is not so strong in Australia, but there's a lot of geothermal energy around Asia. We've invested in a lot of technology there as well. So as I mentioned, just a lot of different technologies we think can be part of that future.
So just bring it back to basics again, and we've got the Jandakot facility, which is a huge industrial facility that you manage here. Just give us an overview of what that does, and then you've just come back from Darwin. Can you just talk through your day and then perhaps maybe your recent trip to Asia, so that the audience can understand how you're this global company, turns over $25 billion last financial year globally, and you move from different zones constantly.
Yes. So what we're looking at here is a picture of sort of different power systems. So I mentioned the Net Power facility, which is here. So it's trying to understand where we see the future, and whether it be hydrogen system, clean power systems, even offshore power generation from waves, from tidal energy. There's different ways to generate all of that. And then the bottom right-hand corner is where we see the carbon sequestration. So we are involved in both CCS projects in Australia, so on the Gorgon CCS project, on the Santos Moomba CCS project, which will be operational later in this year as well. Our Jandakot facility is the Asia-Pacific Center of Excellence for our subsea equipment, which is everything that is on the right-hand side, the big yellow equipment that sits on the seabed. That's what we have our Center of Excellence in Jandakot for, is to maintain that, but also for the decommissioning of existing assets as well.
Excellent. And just before I'm just going to ask Jeremy one more question, and then we're going to break into some questions from the audience. So Jeremy has a specific expertise in diversity and inclusion. Well, you say diversity, equity, and inclusion. And can you talk us through why that is so important in terms of running global teams?
I think for me, it's a passion. I believe that we need to make sure that everything that we are doing is for the benefit of our employees and the benefit of the communities that we operate in as we work across. So in Hughes, we're active in 14 countries in Asia. We're one of the most multinational geomarkets globally. I think the way that we connect with each other, we have to be able to be authentic, we have to be able to connect, but it's finding ways to give back to the community. So an example, there was a conference in Perth recently at the Convention Centre, the Australian Energy Producers Conference. We went out of our way to do things a little bit differently. So there's normally a happy hour at the event, and we can bring things in. We partnered with a local Kimberley business, the Spin Effects Brewing, which is 100% veteran and Aboriginal owned, to come in and bring them in. We also partnered with Down Syndrome Australia to come in and to have some staff at our booth to be able to help support and to provide just booth support. At the OTC conference in KL a few months ago, we did a similar thing. We partnered with the Autism Cafe, which is a charity that we've been working with for a few years, to come in. So we always try to figure out how we can integrate charities and educate our staff, but also the wider communities that work with Baker Hughes.
Excellent. And we once had a conversation, and I said, is the mining resource sector going to understand that that diversity, equity, inclusion is important in terms of raising their own profits? Because if people are not happy at work, then they leave. Can you give us a bit more of I haven't really expressed that very well, but can you give us a bit more of an understanding as to if you're running a company, you don't really do DEI well, what sort of impact on the bottom line of that in terms of your company revenue?
Well, I think it comes down to two concepts. One is diversity of thought. So as we are operating in multi-markets, multi-global, and as we're evolving, we need to make sure that we have the best minds that are with us, that all of the voices can be heard, that they can be expressed, that they feel safe to be themselves at the office. If someone is hiding, so when I first started in this industry, I was in the closet. I started and spent my years as a field engineer. I was not out. I was afraid to come out working on rigs. And I look back and I realized that I was hiding myself, and I was not focused on the job. And about 30% of my brain was probably focused on how do I hide myself. And as we allow people to be themselves and be out and be open, that allows them to bring their whole self to be more authentic. So yeah, I think diversity of thought is one of the bigger ones, but also finding that work-life balance and making sure that people feel that they can be connected, that they know their fellow colleagues, and that they can be open. We spend so much time at work. Why be boring?
Okay, that was so good. Thank you so much. And we're just going to go to the floor and have some questions if we have 5 minutes. Jackie, we got 5 minutes or 10 or?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. So if anyone would like to ask a question, yes. I'm sorry, can you repeat your name?
Serge De Silva from WA Defence Group.
Nice.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and to everyone else as well, of course. But I found your presentation particularly interesting for myself. I saw that slide there of all these businesses that Baker Hughes is investing in. How many of them are Australia-based enterprises, for one? And the second question is about the geothermal energy. Where do you see the potential for that in terms of the energy mix in the future? It's a new source of energy that people are looking at now.
If you go back to that other slide, so on the digital, there's a company called Arms Reliability, which was based out of Ocean Grove, Victoria. We acquired them in 2022, and they form one of the sort of the backbones for one of our digital platforms in asset performance management. So asset performance management is asset strategy, condition-based monitoring, so really understanding the plan. So they were Australian. We are partnering with universities, UWA, Curtin, Monash, and a few others in doing research with our global centers. So making sure that our global technology centers are working with Australian companies. On geothermal, what was the question again?
Just as a source of energy, where do you see it in the energy mix in the years to come as a source of energy?
Traditionally, it was looking for the deepest, hottest well that you could find to get the largest temperature differential. One of the things we're seeing with a lot of the coal seam gas wells that are driving growth in Queensland, in the US, there's a lot of shallow wells that still have enough of a delta T or temperature difference, and the green fire energy, which is on the bottom right, is finding a way to capture that sort of energy where there's going to be a lot of these leftover wells. How can you find a way? So taking what is already there instead of having to drill a new one, how can you repurpose and reuse existing facilities? I think that's one of the big areas.
And Jeff, you had a question?
Sure. For a small or medium-sized business that's interested in either doing more business in Asia or getting into Asia in the first place, what would be your advice to someone in that position?
Join the WA Chinese Chamber.
That was a setup, really.
But because like we do have so many connections into Asia, like a lot of our council members and our patrons and past presidents, like they have all connections in Asia. Many of them have businesses in multinational companies and have businesses in Asia. So they are the people I go to and lean to when we're trying to connect a specific sector or industry for businesses who are coming in or going out. So yes, I would welcome you to consider membership at the chamber. Still until this end of financial year, it's still going to remain the same, very affordable, but it is going up in the new financial year.
I must just add on that as well, and also with where you worked at the Australian Korea Business Council, the Korean businesses and the Chinese businesses use it as a due diligence. So whereas you might really struggle getting a connection, but if you turn up to a conference run by these organisations, everyone is extremely friendly, and their due diligence has been ticked by the fact that you're a member. Yeah, it's a very, very handy tool.
And just to add on that as well, like my previous role and income role, like a lot of them, like even like the first meeting, they've said like, oh, I've already met this and this and this person, and it's been, it's gonna help me open doors. So that's what we're here for. Thank you.
Any more questions? Come on, we've got some great experts here. Can I ask a question again? Have you got any tips in terms of how to deal with the Japanese business people and what sort of cultural protocols that we might observe?
It's a great question. If you are looking to do business in Japan, I recommend to be humble. Second, get used to the pace of doing business there. It's quite slow.
Slower than her.
It takes time for them to make a decision or take an action on it. So that's important that you be patient. And I guess the idea of efficiency is slightly different there because they still have the work culture of lifetime employment, seniority, and the convoluted system. So all those factors taking place, and then it takes time to do any business. So I think that's important.
Louise?
And if I could add to that as well, I'll just also highlight many cultures in Asia, they're very hierarchical. So they are, and Japan and Korea probably one of the most hierarchical. So the approvals process just takes time. So if you're doing and a lot of them, they do business for the long term. So when they want to do business with you, they consider a long-term future. It's not so transactional as what the maybe in Australia are more used to. And it doesn't have as flat a structure as what the Australian does. So I think that those are the main differences that you would observe in probably an Asian typical, a more Asian culture versus the Australian, which would help in your if you keep that in mind in your dealings with Asia.
So sometimes people have mentioned that that the Asian business build the relationship first and then the transaction, whereas in our Australian culture it's more the transaction first and the relationship following. So it's quite a big difference there.
And if you've done business in China, you would know that the real business happens outside of the boardroom and outside of the meeting room. So it's very important when you do business in Asia that don't just have the big fancy meeting in the offices with the very schmick presentations. They will always entertain you, take you out for dinner or lunch, and that's when they get to know you. Because if they want to do business with you long term, they want to know that you're trustworthy, that you're a dependable person, reliable person, before they do it. And a lot of the times, like yes, that's where the contracts will be signed. And yes, it's a very exciting and interesting culture.
So I think that's a great note to finish upon. And can you join me in thanking our guests? Thank you very much. Hope you have a lovely day.